Okay, welcome back. I'm happy to see a few people here, and we continue with our lecture program. And actually, I just realized that it's going to be the first lady speaker here in this hall for the whole 2 days, which is already great. But you know, she's tough. She used to work at the Israeli army before, so you guys behave, okay, and give her a proper welcome applause. Karen Berger Taptail.
Hey everyone, thank you for coming. I'm excited to be here. I'm from Tabtel. Tabtel was established in 2010, and since then we released hundreds of games to the App Store. We are a publisher. I'm from the publishing team, but we also develop apps inside the company. So today I'm going to tell you about our app, Run Sausage Run, and how we grew the app to be downloaded for more than 50 million downloads. That's a crazy number, huh? So first, people tend to say their kids, do not play with your food, right? Do you notice this feeling? So actually, our product manager used to do the opposite. He told these kids, play with your food, create something awesome. And that actually made them eat more healthy food. So that was one of the first inspiration to our game. We understood that playing with food is something that can actually work. We also checked other places and saw that there are more themes outside there that use like playing with food. But we wanted to make sure we are doing it right and not like Google put the cheese below the hamburger, right? So jumping to the end, this is our game. Thanks. This is the reactions that we were looking for. In this game, you are a limbo sausage. Your purpose is not to die. Okay? You are moving through obstacles, and as you can see, you can understand the gameplay from the very 3 seconds of the game. Like you heard Anna laughing after 2 seconds even. So it's really important to have a game in hyper casual. It's really important to have a game that is understandable in the first 3 seconds, but you also need to find ways to make your users play more in the game. So what we found is that users really like our skins and the different sausages. So in order to make them stay more in the game, we added some skins, and I'm gonna talk about it more later. So we jump to the end, but I wanna go back to the beginning. What is hyper casual? You tend to hear this term a lot lately, and in my opinion, it's ruling the app stores, and you can see many hyper casual games in the top of the chart. So hyper casual game, in my opinion, is an app that is low cost, and it doesn't take too much time to create it. Some developers told me they made a game in 2 days, some created it in 3 weeks, some even in 3 months, but in general, it's pretty quick and dirty. And one more thing is the instant gameplay. I will repeat about it a lot in this presentation because it's one of the ground rules, the 3 seconds rules. You have to understand the gameplay in the first 3 seconds of the game. That's hyper casual. In addition, you probably heard this sentence a lot. It should be easy to play, but hard to master. Like the player should get quickly into the game, but it takes some skill to be good at these games. Like to go all the way through all the obstacles, it takes you some time. In addition, it should have broad appeal, because hyper-casual games are usually, in order to market them, we need low CPI. So we are looking for a wide audience, girls, boys, and some of our games are being played by like 5 years old, and in the same game, my mother is also playing. Like, it's really wide audience. And unfortunately, you can't only rely on in-apps in these kind of games. You should add ads, and the main monetization in the hyper-casual games are ads, rewarded videos, interstitial, banners, etc. So I want to tell you how do we work in Tabtel, because I met some of you here in the conference, and they asked me what is our process, how do we choose the games and which one to release. So I want to tell you how do we work. So we created a funnel, and we have our own hyper-casual team, and they start to pitching ideas in their weekly think tank meeting. And they continue in the funnel only if they find something that they like, because we are pitching a lot of ideas. That's also one thing in hyper-casual. In order to find a hit, you should try a few games till you find it, because sometimes you have a great idea, you love it, it looks crazy and seems really good to your friends, but then when you test it, the mechanics is not fun enough, and you only found it when you create this game. So we have a think tank meeting. We are choosing the apps the ideas that we like, and then we proceed to prototyping, and in the end, we are pitching it to our executive levels. In this meeting with the executive, we have executives from all over the company, and also marketing, and not only product. We are thinking about the marketing from the initial stage. Like, don't think about the user acquisition videos only after you build the game. User acquisition is really important in hyper-casual games. So our user acquisition VP is really important in this meeting, and he's thinking and saying, what will this work? Does he think if he thinks it's not going to work? So the marketing is also crucial in hyper-casual games. Our brainstorming is not only with the team, with the hyper-casual team, it's also been in the kitchen and in other parts of the company, and everyone can pitch an idea. This was the first one-pager of Run Sausage Run, the game that you've seen before. You can see that it's really short, and it's one line with the basic mechanics, basic gameplay, and suggestive art. And you can see that from the very first beginning, we were thinking about doing it humoristic, like with humor, and to make our users laugh, like Anna laughs every time she sees the sausage. So in this talk, I will also show you the different stages and how it worked, how it looked in the early stages of the development. So this is our very first prototype. How many of you are developers? Do you do prototypes as well? So it's really crucial for us, and we believe that it's really important to create a prototype in order to get the feeling of the game and see if it works. And also, many times we kill games on this stage because we get the feeling that people are not having fun enough, and we understand that it's better to move to another game, whether to continue and developing an app that is not fun enough. So in the prototype stage, you can already get the first feeling. We are also creating a GDD and concept art. The GDD is a game design document that is usually being created in our internal team, but we sometimes also use external developers to our app, but the GDD is usually in the GDD we do it usually with our own game designers that have a lot of experience. So in the app, it's also think about the world, the environment and the world that is behind the app, and we also have social awareness. In the beginning, this was a suggested skin that we want to do, but we understood that kids might play the game. So we decided to remove the gun and change the name. So it will be more appropriate to kids, because we wanted to approach wider audience, as I said. We also added some prop reference, so people to add to the humor. So we added this skin, but we changed his name to Kevin. Yeah, we're trying to add some small jokes so people will love the game. The next stage after the prototype was the alpha. As you can see, we already added some basic UIs, and it's on solid infrastructure. And you can see the basic game flow and basic GLD. On this stage, you can already give it to some people, some internal people that you can trust to test the game again. I believe that testing is a crucial thing in the mobile area, because it's the best way to get feedback. And if you continue to do marketing or developing without testing, you might find yourself doing the wrong thing or something that is not good enough. Testing helps you get feedback and improve your game. So after a few weeks, we got the vertical slice. Here you can already see the art and the elements, and it's getting closer to the end. This is the beta version. In the beta version, we are still not adding the monetization, but we are starting with the gameplay elements and the game flow, and this is the stage where we start to giving it to external people to check the game and to get more feedback about what we can improve in the game. By the way, in every stage that I'm presenting, we can kill the game. We are trying lots of prototypes, alpha version, beta version, and in every stage we kill some games. So this is the release candidate, and this is the version after QA, monetization, and is ready for the soft launch. And in this stage, we are also investing time in marketing. You know, when you have a really great game or a really great app, it's really good. But if your marketing is not good enough, people won't see your games or won't download it. So to invest time in marketing, it's really, really important. We are doing A/B testing. How many of you know Google Play A/B testing? So we are using it quite a lot. We did hundreds of games, but I actually found out that sometimes you can get one result for one app, and then when you try to do the same in another app, it doesn't work. So again, you need to test, and also test it in different periods of the year. Like sometimes in the summer, one icon can work best, and then in the winter, it doesn't work anymore. So testing is a crucial thing. These were the icons that we tested. What do you think won? Which one won? Anna says 4. 3. So 3, yes. And later we changed it to this one in order to get new appeal and to get new audience. These were actually the first sketches. So it's really, I like to see the difference and what our magicians, our graphic magicians did. and change it to what it was tested. So the version is ready. Now we're ready to soft launch. Soft launch is also a crucial phase in hyper-casual because you get real feedback from real users, and they can lie to you. Your friends, your family, even people, even if you ask people on the street how does your game, they can lie and not tell the real feedback, but real users won't lie. If they don't like the game, they will go out. So in soft launch, we're checking our main KPIs like retention, CPI, but we're also looking at the crash rate and checking that everything works well. And if not, we're doing another soft launch, improving it till we are ready for the worldwide release. On this stage, we are also working on our user acquisition videos. And user acquisition in hyper-casual games are really important in order to get to the top of the top charts. So we are also trying different creatives. Like I said about the icons, we're trying different themes, different creatives, different wording, and we're looking at what works best, doing A/B testing, and keep improving them. It's also worth trying to be rude. I won't say where it was, because I'm worried that they will remove it, but it's worth trying to be rude, because we got tons of downloads because of this one. So keep trying and do some variations of the user acquisition videos. So we released it in Australia, and as you can see in blue, this is the amount of users that we bought. This is the non-organic users. And in the green is the organic users. And that's what we are willing to see when we release an app. We are looking to see an app that we buy some users, and then we get a lot of organic users. That's what is reducing our CPI and eCPI. And this is our release campaign. I actually remember the meeting when we decided to release the game. We had this data, and we needed to decide whether we want to release it or not. It was Christmas time, and in Christmas time, there is a lot of competition in the store. So we needed to decide, okay, is it good enough? Can we release it right now? Or do we need to wait after the holidays and then release it? We were brave and decided to release it, and apparently it was a good decision, because we reached to about 5 million downloads on iOS in just 2 weeks. And the game was crazy hit on the App Store. I think it had like a good combination of great game and great marketing, great user acquisition, and that's what caused everything. So it reached to the #1 place in more than 30 countries, and some crazy ranks, as you can see here. And our entire team, the entire company, couldn't stop looking at App Annie and see that we were at the first place in lots of countries. We also had some people imitate us and did copy. You can also see it right now. And we were not too nervous about it, because we know that imitation is the sincere form of flattery. And when you do something good, many people will copy you, probably. And now it comes, some developers says that it's the most crucial stage, the live ops. Steven will probably talk about it later. And we started to think about a live ops plan. And in this stage, we already had some data from our release. We had some analytics info and reviews that we got on the store. So we needed to think, OK, what we want to improve. We found out that it takes too much time to run every time, like to start a new run. So we decided to reduce the number of tapping and shorten it to only one tap instead of 3. And it made people start the run faster. In addition, we added the coin unlock system because we realized that many people like our skins. They were funny, it was really appealing, and people like to change their skin and run with different sausages. We also added achievement system to keep our players in the game, like run 2 times to get this skin or die 10 times in order to get another skin, and it kept people inside the game. After this update, we saw amazing improvement in our retention and usage, and we kept updating the game because it's not enough to update it one time. In order to keep the app alive and keep users playing in it, you need to add more and more updates. So in this stage, we also tested the icons again, because as I told you before, the time of the year really affects, and if the users are organic or non-organic, it affects on the icon and how many users love it. So we did another test. Which one won? What do you think? Third one, 2. So actually, the third one won. And as you can see, it was with really large gap. It was 30% till 38. It's quite a lot. And imagine what would happen if we kept the same icon. Think how many users would not see our game. So this is the importance of testing the icon all the time. We also add a bug in the game, which made the players get to, I think, 500 scores in just one tap. And we decided to release the app anyway. So what we found in this stage, that you can release an app even if it's not perfect. And we found out that people really like this cheat. We fixed it later, of course, on the live ops stage, but we learned that people liked this cheat because they felt that they found something new in the game. We also added the started pack with in-apps, and our game designer did some research about what's trending around the world. So we added these skins, and we managed to grow our in-app distribution. We got more sales. And we also have a community manager that's following the reviews and analyzing them. And we had some suggestions about what to add. It's really good to get these suggestions, because that's actually what the users want. So why not using it, right? So we added new themes like the garden and the summer, and users really liked it. Our rating was awesome, and this is examples of our reviews. It's pretty long, so we won't read it now because we need to finish soon. But we are answering the reviews. It gives the feeling that we care, and we're also using our own language and the language of the brand to answer. We answer in light way, and we answer like the guy wrote us in the same language. And I will just conclude. Today we talked about the importance of user acquisition, the 3 seconds rule, and how we grew our app to more than 50 million downloads. And I hope you liked it. And questions?
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. That was a nice presentation. Actually, while you were telling us about the game, I couldn't resist, and I just downloaded it. So you have 50 million and 1 download now.
That's great.
I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Yes.
So I just started to play the game, and I have 2 questions immediately. So first one, so many ads,
Yes.
and also in-app purchases. So looking at the revenue, what brings you more money
Ads, definitely. As I said, in hyper casual games, we are relying more on ads than in-app, because it's a quick gameplay, and most of the people don't buy in-app, so we rely on ads rather than in-apps, definitely.
Did you make a research on like on the churn rate because of the ads? Because I just seriously I played like for like 5 seconds and I already seen I don't know 4 ads. For me, it's a kind of like a motive to stop playing.
Yes, we are checking it all the time, and we are playing with the parameters, and that's also something we test. As I said, we are testing everything. So the ads parameters are changing from time to time, and we are checking what works in different time frames.
All right, and one more question about the gameplay and how do you define on how hard it should be to play? Like my sausage died like several times already, but how do you define how hard it should be for a player, especially for a newbie?
So the main thing is that hyper-casual games should be easy to play and hard to master. So it's okay that you died in the first few times, because if it would be more easier, you wouldn't come back. So your sausage died, and then you made this sound, right? You did like, ew, and
Yeah,
that's what you're
I am a
looking
little
for.
pissed, yes.
You were pissed, and you wanted to try again and try again. So the GLD, the game level design, is also something we checked, and we're seeing the data, and if user die too many times, or if there are levels that users can't complete, we are changing it. We can control this and upload more updates.
Okay, thanks. Questions? I have one more actually, but okay.
Thanks for the great talk. You mentioned when you guys went back to optimize the app icon and things like that. How often in general are you guys doing that, or is it just kind of you're monitoring and it reaches a minimum threshold and then you're like, okay, we have to refresh it? Or is it sort of internally, what's the practice and how often are you looking at it?
It's both. When we see that the downloads are decreasing, we are trying to check what we can optimize. So we are doing that as well, but also we are checking our traffic distribution, and we are checking the icons when we have a non-organic audience and when we have mostly organic users, and we check because they prefer different things. So it both. And also before holidays, sometimes we check new icons, and the summertime and winter time and different times of the year.
Okay. We have time for one more question, I guess.
Thank you for the talk. I have two questions actually.
Yes.
Firstly, about the icon. If you change the icon frequently by the seasons and such, won't the new players that search the app get lost in all the fake apps or the copycats?
You are right. It's definitely something that I'm thinking about before changing the icon. And we are monitoring the downloads after we change the icon. But this time, we saw that changing the icons brought us much more users, so it was totally worth. But yes, there are some times that changing the icon doesn't work, and we are changing it back. So you can see, if you follow us on store, you can see that we are changing the icons. You can see different icons from time to time.
Okay, thank you.
And probably the goal is to be better than all the clones.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we're on the first place, so people find us.
Okay. And secondly, the first non-organic users that you will have, do these bring profit to the game, or actually they are loss? Like you give money so you can get these users, but they may not get any of the microtransactions. So do they bring profit?
Yeah, in the end, they bring profit because they're also staying in the game and keep playing. And non-organic users can bring more organic users, because with the non-organic users, we are getting to the top charts. So it brings more organic users. So they definitely bring profit, and user acquisition is really crucial in hyper-casual games.
That's the biggest pain for all the free-to-play games. You pay to get users, but there is no guarantee they're going to pay. Well, at least in games like that, you have ads, right? They at least will watch the ad and bring you something.
Yeah.
At least that, yeah. All right, so we have to go on. Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank
That was
you.
amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for a good laugh and for the sausage too. So we're going to continue in a couple of minutes with the next presentation from Spill Games, and we'll talk about female audience and the games that are made for them and how to treat them well. And by the way, if you need translation from English into Greek, there are headphones and there are translations helping us. So don't be shy, take some. Mayu, come here.
Oh, here. So, forward, backward, that's it.
Ready to continue with our next speaker, and let's welcome Mayu Polovie from Spill Games. Woohoo!
Okay, it's up to you guys. A, introduce yourself. B, bring the knowledge. C, show some cats. There's no wrong option. C? Okay, let's do hands. Who's for A? Nobody. Nobody gives a shit about me. Who's for B? Okay. Who's for C? All right, let's see if our technicians can click on the C. There you go. Aww. All right, thank you very much. No, just kidding. Okay, no, but if some of you are actually interested in me and what I do, you can come after and we can talk about it. Because this choice matters, so I'm not gonna say anything about myself. I'm still gonna bring the knowledge because otherwise Julia's gonna kill me. But yeah. All right. Let's see. That didn't skip properly, but okay. Yeah, so let's start with some assumptions, just so we're all on the same page. Assumption one is that you're going to be interested somewhat in having a story element in your game. I'm going to be talking about branching narrative games, so basically choice-driven games like Choices, Episodes, and Story Beats, which is the game that Spiel Games is working on. Assumption two, when we talk about stories, we're talking about pre-authored content. So that means we're talking about stories that somebody wrote and you're going to read, and they're predefined. We're not talking about environmental storytelling or emergent stories, etc. Assumption three, you're interested in free-to-play. If you hate free-to-play, you might as well go a different way. Hey, that rhymed. No, but just more serious. We work with free-to-play. I've been in the free-to-play industry for over 10 years. And so this will assume that you're sort of interested in bringing story elements to a free-to-play game. Premium story-based games obviously can be successful as well, but they have different challenges and different opportunities. All right, so let's start with the challenges. Challenge number one is that I guess the computer this is on doesn't have the font installed that I chose, but that's a different challenge. Challenge number one, you really need to know your audience. Obviously, when you're making any game, you need to know your audience. But particular for story-based games, you need to make sure that you know who is going to be reading those stories. And because stories are such a personal thing that you either like or hate, or they're basically really close to you, you really need to do your research and see who's going to be reading your stories, what kind of stories do they want to read, what kind of choices do they want to make in those stories. And yeah, so some tips on how to do that. Obviously you need to do your market research. If you're a small indie developer, this might be a bit tougher to do than if you're a big company like EA that has, a whole market research division. But there are tools out there where you can do your market research. You can go on sites like App Annie and check some of the free information they have. You can use good old Google or Microsoft Edge. I don't know, that's a browser, I guess. And just try to figure out what are people reading, what stories are people interested in. At Spiel, we're targeting female players, as Julia was saying, and more mature, so between 20 to 55 years old. Whereas other games like Choices, for example, they're more targeted at teenage females. So you really need to know who is going to play them and what they want to read. Okay, so challenge number two, you need to rely much more heavily on qualitative data. So obviously we still use quantitative data in terms of measuring where people are dropping off, what kind of conversion are we getting, what's the monetization, but quantitative data is not going to tell you why someone didn't like your story or liked your story. So one of the biggest measuring points that we have in these story-based games is the conversion from chapter 1 to chapter 2. So that's obviously a quantitative measuring point that we can have, but that doesn't tell us why they didn't choose to move on to chapter 2, that they encounter a bug, that they not like the story, that they not like the characters, that they not like the interactions. And for that, you really need to rely on qualitative data. So yeah, one really good thing to get that is using focus groups. Obviously, you need to make sure that your focus groups is a representative sample of your target audience. So again, you need to get back to do your homework as to who is going to be playing your game. Then you can invite them over, have them play your game, have a survey prepared for them, watch them play, ask them questions about the story. There are also some services out there like Playtest Cloud and others where you can pay to get some of this research done as well. Challenge number 3, creating stories takes time, a lot of it. This is something that we've encountered at Spiel. Story Beats, the game that we're developing that's in soft launch in some countries. We were a bit optimistic in terms of how quickly we could get stories done. If you want to have good stories, you need to realize that it's going to take a lot of feedback loops. It's going to take a lot of times to edit, to make sure that it's proofread. If you plan on localizing, that's another step that you need to take into consideration, because localizing a story is a bit more challenging than just localizing, let's say, a game's UI, because you need to make sure that the story comes across in the different language as well. So some tips here. You need to make sure that your designers and writers speak the same language. Most of the time, your designers are not going to be your writers, and your writers are not going to be your designers. Also, unless you're very lucky, you're probably going to be working with writers that are coming from the novel book space and not from the game space. And writing a story for a book is very different than writing a story for a game. So you need to make sure that there's a mutual understanding between the game designers and the writers. At Spiel, for example, we have regular workshops where the designers will teach the writers about the game mechanics and how the stories are actually getting implemented into the game. And the other way around, the writers are also teaching the game designers in terms of how they write the story, the process behind it, so that we can really get a mutual understanding there. This is kind of at the core of why there are sometimes communication issues between designers and writers. This is from a guy named Zoran Jonsson and from a Gamma Sutra article. The actual narrative of a game, meaning the series of events which determines the plot, is the hardest element to reconcile with the existential interactivity of games. Lots of big words in there to make it sound really smart. Basically what that means is that a story, by definition, has sort of a path that it's going, whereas in a game, you want to give the player freedom. You want to let them choose where they want to go. You want to let them choose, which path to take, and that kind of collides a lot, and it's sort of the challenge that story-based, especially with branching narrative paths, have. And sort of this is at the core of the issue why stuff like this happens. I don't know if you played Mass Effect 3, but this was like a big controversy where it's a game that prides itself in being story-driven and having meaningful choices, and people got to the end of the game and basically discovered that it was just a color swap, the different endings. Some of the players that played Mass Effect 3 maybe felt that this is a more accurate representation. But yeah, that's basically the difficulty, right? You want to give players choices. You want to make them feel like the path that they take in the game matters. But on the other end, yeah, it's hilarious. On the other end, Mass Effect is a hugely expensive game. So a company like EA can't really afford to create a bunch of content that, let's say, a segment of your players are never going to see. So in the end, this is kind of what you have to deal with, the compromise. Yeah, so going back to, writing takes a long time. You should have a well-defined review process. At Spiel, we're still sort of tweaking it day by day. You need to make sure that it's very clear who's going to write the story, who's going to review it, who's going to implement it, etc., just to avoid too many back and forth. You also need to sort of have a very strict cutoff, because just as a game, you can keep tweaking a story forever and never actually get it out. So you need to know, what's good enough. Challenge number 4, you will be dependent on the content treadmill. So again, by definition, stories have an end. Free-to-play games, at least the good ones, should not have an end. And so what happens is that obviously you're going to have to be delivering more and more story content in your game. Players of these choice-based games are really hungry for new content, and the really big spenders and the very active players are going to read through your content way faster than you think. So you need to be aware that if you're going to do one of these games, you're going to be creating new stories for a long time, as long as your game is successful. And you need to be okay with that, and also, yeah, you need to be prepared for that. You need to have the content pipeline. You need to make sure you have a backlog of catalogs. You need to make sure that, if some of your key writers fall off or, get a different job, that you have someone to back them up. Because, yeah, people are going to read through it quickly. All right, let's move on to some of the opportunities. Opportunity one, get your players invested. If you don't know this guy, it's Red Shirt Guy. He's very passionate about World of Warcraft's lore. And this just goes to show that people get really invested in the story of a game, right? If you have the right story for the right player, they're going to love it, they're going to live it, they're going to go to conventions and ask really tricky, in-depth questions about characters and the lore. But that's good. It means that they care. The story that they wrote was important to this person. Opportunity number two, and if you haven't noticed, yes, I like Blizzard games. Opportunity number two, increase the retention. Obviously, retention, big topic with free-to-play games. No matter how fun, interesting, new, exciting your core game mechanic is, after playing it for hundreds or thousands of hours, it's going to get repetitive. And story allows you to sort of wrap that repetitiveness in a new context, gives you some fresh story to read and participate and, give a nice wrapping to your core mechanic. Stories are also very natural to the human being, so we really like stories, we really get attached to stories. That's why, news, when they report about a car crash, they don't say like 5 people died in a car crash. They say like mother of 2 with, leaves behind 3 children, and they make a story out of it so that we care more about it. Opportunity number 3, allow your players to live out their fantasies. This is a very big one. We have sort of found out that, these, obviously all games are sort of allow you to escape a bit from your normal life, but particularly these choice-based games allow you to live out some of the things that you're maybe thinking about, but are not brave enough to try, or you don't feel comfortable with it, or anything like that. That's why a book like 50 Shades of Grey, which most people will say is a pretty terribly written book, but still had millions and millions of people read it because it allowed them to live out that sort of BDSM fantasy. That's the thing. So yeah, so this is what our games do as well. Here are some examples from Story Beats and other games as well, like Choices and Episodes. So we cover topics of cheating, we cover topics of, sex, we cover topics of breakup and heartbreak. We cover, forbidden love, being, having something with your teacher or professor or boss. We cover, LGBT topics. So these are things that are very core to the human experience. And, it goes back to the old, sex sells addendum. That's very true. Almost all of the stories that are successful in this genre involve some element of romance. And that can be like sci-fi romance, fantasy romance, modern romance, college, whatever it is, but it's always romance. So if you can come up with a game that doesn't involve that, that's successful, I'd be interested. Opportunity number 4, tap into a sizable market. So maybe some of you are aware that this is quite a big market, and it's still quite young, but it's growing quickly. So there's definitely an opportunity to get in there and innovate and maybe come up with a new take on it. This is the only graph I have, and I made it quite boring because it's a graph. Yeah, this is basically the yearly revenue. This was 2015. The market was estimated at $11 million. By 2018, it's already $200 million. And according to some experts and analysts, they estimate that by 2023, it's going to be $1.5 billion. So there is definitely opportunity to get in there. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you very much. Well, sex sells apparently, like
Yeah,
yes.
surprise.
You knew that. Do we have questions about stories about cats?
You should have taken pictures of some of the cats that I see around, walking around town.
Yeah,
here.
there are so many cats in Athens.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Okay, we have first question.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
for the speech. I have actually two questions. First is about like sex sells. Do you know who invented it and when and why it sells?
Invited sex?
It's probably some old Greek dude. Like,
No, actually it's Calvin Klein in the late 80s.
yeah.
Yeah, and another thing is that you've said that you've tested out different romance variants, like all the settings, LGBT stuff, and from your tests, what works best? What is the most selling content at the market right now?
Yeah, in general, so one thing I forgot to mention maybe is that these games need to have a quite big catalog of books. So if you download Choices or a more established game, they have, dozens of books for different tastes. But definitely the things that are most powerful and that drive players to convert during those choice moments that are premium choices, where these games monetize, are sort of the build-ups to the more, let's say, naughty sex thing. So not like your traditional, you don't have any stories where it's just like, do you want to have sex with your husband? It's always like some forbidden element or something that's, out of the ordinary, let's say.
All right. Another question.
Hi, thank you for the presentation.
No problem.
You mentioned that it's important to have a very good review process. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the process looks like for you guys?
Yeah, definitely. So at Spiel, we work with remote writers, so the writers are not in-house. Choices, for example, they have in-house writers. So we have a setup where we have a lead writer that's sort of taking care of managing all the different writers. We usually have 2 to 3 writers per book. And we have it set up where we have weekly meetings where we align on the story. They deliver the scripts. Then someone from game design will review it. The tool that we use requires the script to be in a specific format, so we check for that as well. And we basically have 2 or maximum 3 feedback loops before we get it into the game.
Okay. People becoming more brave.
What kind of writer you work with? Series and serial writers, or books?
We have different ones. So we have a few that have been working on other games. So we have a writer that worked on a lot of the Telltale games, for example. We have some writers that are more from script, TV, and movie. We have some writers that are quite talented but pretty junior, coming not straight out of university, but pretty fresh. Honestly, that's a very good question, because ideally you would have a writer that's also a game designer that sort of understands how they need to write for the game, but you would be very lucky to find someone like that. And if you are someone like that, or you know someone like that, send them my way, because we are looking for that. But yeah, it's from all sorts of areas. Obviously, ideally, it would be writers that have worked on games before, but we use many writers that are from traditional novels and film and media.
Thank you. One more question here.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you again for this wonderful speech you had. Also, by the way, do you have cats of your own?
Yeah, I have 2 cats, actually.
Oh, that's
no,
wonderful.
3, sorry. We just adopted another one. So,
Oh, that's
yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to build off the initial question about the outsourced writers and all
Yeah.
that. I wanted to ask you if you're using writers mostly predominantly from like Western countries, or if you're trying to expand to like other audiences from like in Asia or Africa or South America and
Yeah,
countries
that's
like
a good
that.
question. Right now, we're focusing on the Western market, Well, we do have writers. We don't only have writers from the US. We have some writers from Eastern Europe. We have some writers from the UK as well. Obviously, you know, when we interview them, we need to make sure that their English knowledge is on a level that's good. But it is a topic that we're considering. We're considering localization for the Asian markets, for example, and see how that would work, definitely.
Maybe they would like different stories.
Yeah.
Who?
Hello. What are your tips for somebody who is trying to do it by himself, without a team of writers, but by himself? Do the development, do the writing, everything.
You're brave. You're a brave person. Obviously, you know, if you're doing it by yourself, you're gonna have to pick up a lot of the different skills, and I would suggest trying to get help, trying to look, you know, trying to look at forums, trying to look, you know, there's probably people willing out there to collaborate even for free and, you know, trying to get something done. But if you want to do it yourself, it's just going to take longer, and you're going to be patient and endure, and eventually you'll get there.
Okay, one last question before we finish this session.
What are your thoughts regarding the future of storytelling in the emerging virtual and augmented reality technologies?
Yeah, that's VR is sort of a topic that I'm sort of following on the sidelines. We're not right now focusing on anything like that, but I think obviously it has a lot of opportunities. The porn industry is leading the way, as usually with those kind of things. But I think in terms of choice-based games, right now I think what's lacking, right now they're a very solitary experience. You just read them by yourself, you don't have a lot of interaction. It would be really interesting to see if someone can come up with a way where you have maybe a collaborative storytelling experience or some kind of interaction with other players to see how that will work with the games.
All right, so it's time to finish. Thank you so much, Maya. That was amazing. If you have questions for him, please don't hesitate. Come and take his business card and talk to him, probably outside the hall. And we're ready to continue in about a couple of minutes with the next speaker from Attica Games.
Δύο, off.
Okay, we are ready to continue. We have a session right here before coffee break, and then two more sessions that three of them are going to be really interesting. So let's greet our next speaker, Stephen Lee from Decca Games, with the legendary presentation.
Great. Hello. So, unfortunately, I have not incorporated cats or sex into my presentation, but I hope you guys will find it really interesting. It's a pleasure to be here at Athens Game Festival. I've been told that this is the second year, and from what I can see, there's really, really high-quality developers and some really good-looking games. So I'm really happy that the games industry is alive and growing here. So one thing that I usually like to do before getting into the content of the presentation is just to better understand you guys. So just a quick survey of the people in the room. How many people here are actually developers? Game developers. Great. And keep your hand up if you have a game that's live right now and you're still looking after it. Okay, good. Okay, so about half of you. That's good. Everyone else, are you guys publishers or service providers, media? Just curious?
Or just players.
Players? Okay, cool. That's even better. Okay, good. So my name is Steven. I'm here to talk about live operations. Before we get started, a really, really quick introduction about Decca Games. So we are an indie publisher, but completely different from other independent publishers that you may have met in the industry. Basically, what I mean by that is we don't actually do a lot of the things that traditional publishers would do, which is marketing and user acquisition. I'll explain a little bit why in a few minutes. Instead, we focus 100% on live operations and games as a service. So essentially, we take over or acquire existing games and we help them to improve. So that's going to be the bulk of my talk today. So Decca Games was founded just over 2 years ago by a bunch of people from some of the fine companies you see listed here. So we really, really understand free-to-play games. That's our core competency. And we're headquartered in Berlin, but we have a distributed team. So outside of Berlin, we have a ton of people in Eastern Europe where I guess the cost of labor is a lot lower. We also have some people in North America and parts of Asia. So I myself came from Six Waves, which was a very, very large publisher back in the Facebook and browser gaming days, and also really successful in Japan on mobile. So back in the day, when I first started in the gaming industry over 8 years ago, it was relatively easy to launch a game and make it successful. So for large publishers, you would have a large network of games and with a few 100 million DAU and a lot of players, a lot of games. And when you launch a new game, you basically cross-sell players from your old games into new ones. And you're able to achieve scale that way. You spend a bit of money on marketing and user acquisition after that, but the promotional channels and mechanisms were very clear and very proven. I would say nowadays it's a lot tougher to make a game successful, primarily because nowadays the focus is so much on marketing and there's so much new content and it's so much more competitive now. It's easier than ever for game developers to create a game, but it's much harder for them to make it successful because of user acquisition. So I'll show you a little bit more about what I mean. So this is sort of your traditional marketing user acquisition funnel. So at the very top of the funnel, you have publishers, game developers spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases millions of dollars, to acquire users, right? And unfortunately, this is not a one-to-one dollar correlation, right? You're not spending $1 and getting a user back. And depending on your genre, I've seen a lot of mid-core and core games, you could be spending $6, $7, $8 to acquire a player, right? And this is just at the top of the funnel. Now, in every layer below in this funnel, you're actually dropping off and losing players. So out of all those players, are those real installs? Are they actually activating your game? If you're looking at the retention numbers of the industry, even for the best games out there, one day later, you're losing a quarter of those players that you've spent a lot of money to acquire, right? After, let's say, 14 days, you've probably lost, at least half. And for the best games, after 30 days, you've lost 80, 90% of your players. And even looking at your paying players, that's usually less than 10%. If you're a really good game, it's 5%, somewhere in that ballpark. And so if you're spending millions of dollars and you're getting a very, very small trickle of revenue at the bottom of the funnel, I would submit to you that user acquisition is really, really challenging. And now, it doesn't mean that having a huge budget and having a great marketing plan and marketing partners is not important. It's really and really important, actually, but it is not the be-all, end-all. It's not everything, and there's a lot more ways that you can approach it. So I think you can see in the market these days, even your biggest publishers cannot sustain this marketing model forever. Even the guys in the mobile market that were big a year ago, they're spending much less now, and you're seeing the rise of hyper-casual games and games which cost a lot less in terms of cost per acquisition. All right, so I've spent a lot of money on marketing my game. What happens next? So basically, as your game gets older, it becomes harder and harder to market, right? So older games become less effective to market, even if you're refreshing the creatives. Players get tired of seeing the same ads over and over again. You're releasing content, but you're making less revenue from it. And when you're trying the same thing over and over again, players get tired of that as well, right? So it becomes harder and harder to support these projects over time. Your developers get bored. Developers always want to work on new and interesting projects instead of working on the same thing over and over again. And as they become less interested, your players can also sense that, and they become less interested as well. So unfortunately, what that means is your games just slowly decline over time. It happens to everyone in the industry, and it's something that really can't be avoided. What can we do about this? So basically, there's a few options. Typically, behind door number one, you can actually keep the game live. So this happens a lot. Just leave it in maintenance mode, let it sit there, collect revenue. Or you could probably put like a really small skeleton team on the game. Or perhaps you can farm that out to a low-cost team in India or in Eastern Europe or somewhere where it doesn't cost a lot of money and you can make some money back. Behind door number two, you could actually just sunset the game, just shut it down. It costs more than it actually takes to keep the game alive. So, but either one of these options is not ideal for players, and they're not happy about that, right? So your players that really enjoy the game would ideally love to continue playing your game, right? So I would actually submit that there's door number three, which is to focus on live operations, and this is what I'm here to talk to you guys about. Typically, live operations, people think about it as events and updates to the game. It's actually a lot more than that. It's a lot more than tactics and KPI. And within Deca Games, we are actually calling it Legendary Live Ops. And how do we define it? By basically creating an experience that players will come back to daily for decades. Now, what I mean by experience is that live operations is not something that is bolted on at the end of the game when you're kind of getting ready to launch the game and after you've gone pretty far down the road of development. Instead, this is something you should be thinking about from the beginning and pretty much all the time. Quick trivia question, the word decades actually means basically 10-year periods, right? So Deca Games, we're actually called Deca Games because we believe that when we take a game over, we can keep it going for at least another 10 years. That's our goal. So I'll show you a game that we're working on right now, which is called Realm of the Mad God. I'm not sure if any of you guys have played this. Any of you guys have played? All right, awesome. I love you guys. We'll talk more after this. I'll pay you a little bit later. Okay, so Realm of the Mad God was launched over eight years ago, back in 2010. It was, I'd say it's a core game. It's a permadeath, free-to-play co-op RPG. It's pretty core. It was an indie hit for sure, and Kabam acquired the game back in 2012. They tried a few things with the game, but at the end of the day, compared to Contest of Champions or other games, it's really not moving the needle for them. So within 2 years, they had a skeleton team behind the game, and it really wasn't given a chance to succeed. So we acquired the game a little over 2 years ago because we saw a lot of potential in this title, but I think the challenge for us was to figure out how to unlock this potential. So what's the first thing we did? Does anyone have a guess? Once we acquired the game, anyone have a hint? Fired everybody. Okay, almost. No, the first thing we did was actually play the hell out of the game, but to be serious, the first thing we did was actually find what we like to call internally our super fans. So who are our super fans? They're these guys. So these are actually not our super fans. These are Greek football fans. They were during the Euros back in, I think, 2012 it was. But anyway, The word fan is actually short for fanatical, and these are guys that are crazy about your game. They absolutely love your game. They've been with your game since day one. They probably know the ins and outs of your game better than almost everyone within your studio. So these guys, from our perspective, are the biggest asset that you can find in your game, and they exist somewhere for every single game. So it could be in a chat room, it could be in a forum, a wiki. For us, we found that the Realm superfans were in Reddit. So very quickly, we engaged them and started talking to them and tried to learn as much as we can about the game directly from these guys. And what we learned very quickly was that we had a problem. I'll show you what I mean. So when the game first launched, it was good, but it lacked complexity. So Kabam actually added this pet system, which is this orange thing you see on the left-hand side. So basically, they added this whole upgrade system. You can fuse pets. It added a lot of complexity to the game. The revenues went up, but it also created a huge divide between payers and non-payers because the pets were too powerful. It became super easy for the paying players. But for the non-payers, they were really pissed off because it was really unfair and there was this feeling of pay to win. So it actually caused a huge churn within the game. I would say it didn't really have the desired effect that Kabam wanted. So we couldn't really nerf this or remove it. We had to figure out how to manage this and how to leverage this to make the game perform better. So we were talking to our super fans about this, and they were really, really excited. So as we were talking to them, they couldn't believe that, hey, there's actually people that care about this game. They're taking it over. And so when we actually took the game over, the game actually became the #1 trending subreddit on Reddit, and they promoted it to the homepage. We took to social media as well to try to build on this momentum and build on this buzz. So we had a lot of great ideas. People were getting really excited. And now we just had to kind of go and start to execute these ideas. So the first thing we did once we had these ideas in hand was basically enlist our top players. So we had a lot of really passionate, really knowledgeable people. And so we actually brought these guys into the fold. So they became DECA employees. We got them directly involved with implementing changes in the game. So on the left, they were involved in game balancing and helping us to figure out the best way to improve that. On the right, we enlisted a lot of players as beta testers. So we had a lot of ideas about how to improve the games, but our fans and beta testers were really great about giving us detailed feedback about the best ways to do this. So we would try little things here and there. If it really seemed to be something that they responded well to, we would kind of continue along that path. If they didn't really like it, they're very, very, very vocal to let us know, and we dial it back and look for another solution. So this was very, very key to enlist the top players. On top of that, we also invested in tools. So the term UGC stands for user-generated content. So UGC was a big tool for us to get our super fans involved in the game. So we allowed them to basically engage in a lot of customization. So on the left-hand side, you'll see we allowed players to design their own skins in the game. So I think nowadays you'll see, especially in Fortnite and other games, cosmetics has become a key driver of revenue. And I like to think that we were a little bit at the forefront of that. Also, on the right-hand side, players also design dungeons. So, again, these players have been in the game for over 6 years. They've been there a lot longer than us, and they know exactly what kind of stuff they want to see in the game, what kind of challenges and experiences that they wanted to play through with their friends. So rather than DECA Games coming to players to say, hey, here's all this great new stuff that we created, and we hope you like it, instead, this is new content coming directly from their peers and from their friends, and that's an entirely different proposition. So it's new stuff that's coming from their peer group, and they're excited to play it together. So if you remember the previous game loop, this is kind of how it looks now. So everything on the left in the blue and the white is kind of what we added since we took it over. So the pet upgrading system, which was so divisive, we basically de-emphasized that. So we increased the drop rates and also optimized the cost to make it feel less like a pay-to-win game, which is the main problem that a lot of the non-payers had with the game. So they started coming back to the game. And instead, we emphasized the customization. So the new skins, the new user-created dungeons. And these customized items became sort of the chase items within the game that people spend a lot of money trying to get. So it became this kind of virtuous cycle, which is really nice, and it enabled us to really kind of build a new, completely new flow in the game. And because the content is also user-generated, it's actually not, you know, costing us a ton to develop ourselves. Obviously, we have to do a lot to make sure it works properly. But on top of that, you know, it allowed us to operate the game more profitably because we're also from Europe as opposed to North America, which is more expensive. But anyway, that was sort of how we revamped the game loop. In addition to that, what we like to call kind of quality of life improvements. Now, these are things that you really cannot you can't really quantify in terms of how the dollar impact that it will have on the game in terms of ROI. You know, sometimes it's pretty hard to really attach a dollar figure to this, but we find it to be absolutely vital to be rigorous about this when you're taking care of your game. Especially as a game gets older, you have old technology, and you have to make sure the game is still running properly on new devices, and that your players that are really diehards are getting the exact same experience. And if they're not, you better be sure you're fixing that right away so that they can continue to come back and enjoy the game. So these are things that we're very, very diligent about doing every 2 to 3 weeks in the game, fixing bugs, cleaning up the quality of the life of the game. And the whole time as we're doing this, we're keeping an open dialogue with our players directly, so they know exactly what's coming. And as we're rolling it out, they're also reciprocating and telling us, okay, this is great. Or if it's not something that they're responding well to, you better believe they'll let us know right away. So this transparent communication, building up this trust with players, they know that we'll hear them out, and it's really, really critical to our success. Okay, so how did we do? So basically, since we took the game over a little over 2 years ago, we have successfully doubled the DAU of the game. DAC is an internal measure which we call daily active customers. Is essentially your paying players. We were able to triple our daily active customers. In terms of revenue, I'm not going to give you the exact figure, but this is the revenue trend of the game right now. It's now in its 8th year, and it's on pace to have a record year, which is we're really, really happy about. Most importantly, we've spent zero money on marketing and user acquisition. Now, this is purely by focusing on live operations, on listening to your players to understand, you know, what they're looking for and giving them what they want. So if you remember this traditional UA funnel, where you start with, you know, tons of money at the top of the funnel to get to a very, very small set of payers at the end, we've essentially flipped this around. So we've started with our existing fans. We don't spend any money to acquire them. They're already there. We engage them as openly and as transparently as possible, find out what they're looking for, get them engaged. They, in turn, bring their friends back into the game, people that were lurking, people that used to play and were kind of fed up with what happened. They bring them back, and we continue to build that trust and loyalty over the long term. So for you guys that are game developers, and you don't have tons of money on marketing in UA, we really, really like the approach that we've done, and I would recommend you consider it as well. So for you guys that are in the audience that are developers, where are your super fans? They're probably in there somewhere. You just have to find them. They're probably unhappy about something or fed up with something. Talk to them. Get them excited. They're going to be really excited that someone is listening to them and really listening to them. And if they know that they can reach you and they have the power to effect change in the game, they will reward you with true, genuine passion and hopefully dollars as well. So my final slide, this is basically a screenshot from Realm. And this is sort of our community kind of banding together to let us know how happy they were with what we were doing in the game. So with that, I just want to say thanks for your time. I know your time is a valuable resource. I'm really glad you chose to spend it with me today. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Steven. Does someone want to ask a question? Of course. Okay.
I have a mic here.
Hi, Steven. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question and a comment. Basically, we do a similar thing. We call it community-driven development, not live operations. But the main idea is that you've spoke about an existing brand with big amount of loyal players. Have you tried that on a completely new game where you need to do the initial user acquisition to nurture those loyal players, and how it performs if you ever did it?
Right, really good question. We have not done that yet because the games that we're currently servicing are all at least 6 or 7 years old. But actually that's going to be changing. So as we acquire new games, some of them are going to be not completely new, but they're going to be ones that we're going to be spending as well. So I'm happy to keep you up to date with what we're doing, but we have not had to deal with that challenge yet.
Cool. Thanks for the talk. So Mark Rosewater, the head of design at Magic: The Gathering, he once said that, you know, definitely listen to your fans in terms of what's wrong with the game, but not necessarily how to fix it. How have you found, you know, the integration of the fans? Because they could be like, you know, well, we want the game to be free, you know, how do you manage that?
I get it. That's a really, really smart question, because you always have this sort of very vocal minority, which may or may not have the best interest of the game in the long run in mind. They may have their own self-interest. We try to do it kind of as a committee. So we have sort of game masters. We have top players that you know we trust in the past, and also internally. And basically, we'll kind of try to come to a consensus that way, whether or not it makes sense. And basically, because we have that trust of players, if we roll something out and it doesn't seem to be working, we can actually, you know, be very upfront with them about that and say, hey, look, you know, here's the reasons why this, you know, change doesn't make sense for us, and they're usually quite accepting of that.
Thanks. Another question?
Hello, and thank you for your speech. You talked about user-generated content. What about using content from, like mods, for example? Not being in the middle of the content, like some games, like in my mind now comes Minecraft, which gives them full accessibility to the code, and the mod.
Yes, I hear you. Mods are kind of tricky with gaming, right? Some developers have accepted mods. We haven't really done that because it just hasn't come up as an issue, but I would say that it's quite dangerous because you really don't want to mess around with the game balancing. So usually we try not to, you know, encourage people to come up with mods for the game. That being said, that has worked really well for other people in the market. So I can't speak to that experience, but so far we have not had to deal with mods yet.
Thanks. Another question?
Thank you for your talk. So, a more business-oriented question. So, how do you convince stakeholders to actually, you know, invest in live ops when, as you said, it's very hard to quantify it, and sometimes, like, you know, stakeholders they want like positive ROI, ROAS or something. So, how do you convince them when you're unaware of when you're unable to predict the outcome, and you're unable to predict that you're going to be trending on the Reddit's front page?
Yeah, I think you never really know what the result of something is going to be for certain, right? I think if you could predict that, you'd be super rich. I just think that the marketing, like from our perspective, marketing in UA was not a viable channel for us to grow revenue of the game. It's a lot easier for us to try new things and try them quickly, and if they fail, so be it. But if you have a really, you know, if your concern is sort of keeping the studio alive and maybe it's not worth investing resources to try something, that's really tough. I mean, but if you have, you know, there's examples of studios where they want to keep a game alive and they actually crowdfund, or they find other ways of securing funding that allows them to try new things and allows them to keep their players happy, right? So I don't think there's a clear 100% way to guarantee this, but I think it's worth, you know, if you're really loyal to your players and they're also loyal, it's hopefully something worth trying.
All right, thank you very much. And one last question from me. You probably mentioned that, but what kind of games are you looking for, except that they're old?
Yeah, actually, when I joined the company, yes, they were all really old. I'm trying to change that. So we actually just acquired a game last week, which is not so old. It's only about 4 years old, and it's our first casual game. So
so you're open to casual games?
In short, yes. So as long as there's an audience and as long as the game has done okay at some point. We have to manage our risk as well. But I'm widening the funnel to look at casual games as well. But our preference is for free to play because that's our background and we understand it really well.
So basically, it should be free to play, and people who manage the game are not happy with the results for a long time.
Yeah, or it's something that, quite frankly, we need to be really excited about because, as I said, we hope that we're going to be working on it for a long time, right? So if it's a game that's making good money, but we're not really psyched about it, we're probably going to pass on the project.
Of course, yes, I believe you. Okay, thank you so much, Steven. That was very interesting. Thank you for coming to Athens. Guys, we're going to have a short break for half an hour, and then we have 2 more sessions. Please come back. First, we're going to have a talk about developer communities. We'll cover what you have here in Greece, how to probably get to the game industry, and what's happening. And we'll have a perfect example about Finland and how great everything is organized there. And then the last session will be from senior producer from Machine Games. Well, they're currently working on Wolfenstein, Youngblood. I think there are a lot of fans, so come back from 5 till 6. I'll see you here.